Hi, you're watching Monday Night Live. My name is Brendan Malone, and on this episode I'm going to be speaking to Peter van Zweeden. Peter is a New Zealand father and a chiropractor who has a Bachelor of Science from Victoria University, majoring in genetics and embryology. He also has a Bachelor of Applied Science in Chiropractic from the Phillip Institute in Melbourne. In the lead up to the 2020 general election in New Zealand, Peter launched the Little Pink Casket project, which saw him carry a child-sized pink coffin on his back for a non-stop 525-kilometre walk. That's right, 525 kilometres from Tauranga to the steps of New Zealand's Parliament in Wellington. Without any further ado, let's have this important conversation with Peter van Zweeden about exactly why he did that. Peter, thank you so much for being with us here to have this important conversation. Tell me, and I'm sure our audience wants to know this as well, what was it that motivated you to do this walk of 525 kilometres? That's a long way. Why did you do this?
Yeah, good question. The abortion law, when it was passed in March, I'd written a submission into it, as many others had. I think 25,000 was the number I heard mentioned. I felt like democracy wasn't upheld with it. I felt it was rushed through. Some people think that the abortion law was just suddenly conveniently located just before COVID, but that wasn't true. I mean, it was always on the agenda. But for such an important law to be introduced in November and then passed in its finality after the third reading by March, it was just a rush. It was a rush job. Democracy, I think, wasn't upheld. And when the abortion law came through, it was just upsetting. It was just like, okay, what can we do? And then we were locked down with COVID, appropriately, but again, it just silenced any opposition. So yeah, that's what motivated me initially. It was a point of frustration of, this isn't a democratic process, and the voices that I think could have improved the law weren't heard.
And so this is the symbolism of the pink casket is representative of what for you?
Well, it's an interesting thing. It was a vision that I got that because I was a little bit upset with the whole concept and just going, well, what can I do? And I kept getting this reoccurring vision of a little pink casket. And so I guess that was more a deep thing, not something that I just suddenly thought of. It wasn't planned. It was just that's what came about. Interesting though, because it's symbolic of, I mean, pink is more of a girl's color, and internationally, girls are basically aborted more often than boys are. And not to say that boys are not important, but it's kind of categorical that. It's a peaceful color. And it was a peaceful march. And the two colors that actually, and it was very defined, the color that I got. When I went to the paint shop, it was a very interesting thing. The two colors, their names are Precious Thing and True Love.
Wow.
It was a mix of those two. And I thought, wow, that's just something even more fitting. And so hence the pink casket.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So
Tell me, take your mind back, if you will, to the passing of the law. When back in March, when the law was passed, you realised that this was the law. This is now one of the most extreme abortion laws in the world. For those who don't know, abortion on demand for any reason up to 20 weeks, post 20 weeks, and right up to and including birth, according to the lawyers, the legal experts. It is now legal in our country if someone was willing to do that. What was your reaction when you found out about, I guess, the content and the substance of what had actually been brought into law here?
Just really upset. I mean, I love kids. I work a lot with kids in my clinic. I have 6 kids of my own. We foster kids. and just the whole concept of the injury to the kids was a big thing. Just the concept that they could be disposed of in such an unthoughtful way. Post the walk, though, my views did change about that. It didn't become lesser; it just changed. But at the time, it was very much, it felt like here is a group of people that are just being neglected and given no right at all, and the most vulnerable,
Can you tell me? You talk about the change you experienced on the walk. Can you tell us just a little bit about that? What in what way do you think it deepened for you? Was there other aspects that came into play for you?
Well, yeah, it did. It did. Yeah, we got a lot of private messages. We got a lot of open messages that you can read on Facebook, but there was a lot of messages that were on private that we're not at liberty to fully chat about. But
of course,
woman who opened up and said, "Look, I've never told this to anyone," and then they told us their story, and I thought I had a pretty good understanding of abortion, but I learned so much more on the journey. It was amazing because a lot of the women are trapped. They're trapped in circumstances that they have little control over. And no one chooses to have an abortion because they had nothing better to do. That whole point of thought is a fallacy as far as I've seen. Yeah. But yeah, we've got women who are desperate, and some who have no choice, some who are coerced. And so is that whole concept of there's not just one victim here being the child, there are two victims. The women who are in a desperate situation, looking for a solution to their problem, but is abortion their best choice? And so, yeah, a total change in mindset, I think, through the journey.
It's interesting in many ways. That really makes the law a lot more callous, actually, doesn't it? When you consider that that what it's effectively done is actually made the pathway towards abortion even speedier and more likely, just creating more victims all round.
Yeah, it is. And the question, and one of the things that really came up was a number of times coercion was a major factor in it, with the threat of violence or parents who just, the shame of it was just too much for their family. And it would just be a simple questions that were heartfelt. As a healthcare practitioner, we're obliged to always make sure we know where people are coming from. Abortion's not asking those simple, absolutely mandatory healthcare questions. Yeah. And with it, it's a callous law.
Tell me, have you ever done anything like this before? This is a big thing to undertake. Had you ever, were you someone who had back in the day, you were a secret hippie and done a whole lot of protesting, or was there anything like this you'd ever done before? Or was this new to you?
Oh, this is new to me. I don't like being in the public arena, to be quite honest. Never walked this far in the slightest. I try to keep fit, but probably in the last 12 months, I've been particularly unfit, a lot more fit after the walk, mind you. But as far as something like this, no. But I guess it got my goat that much that I thought, no, I'm going to go to Wellington. I don't know if it's going to make any difference, but yeah, we'll give it a shot.
Do you do tramping or day walking? You done any of that sort of stuff before? And what's the furthest you'd walked before this 525 Ks?
Probably the furthest we've done is a few tramps, which would probably cumulatively be maybe 40, 50K.
Wow.
But in the last 12 months, probably the furthest I would walk would have been about 5 or 6K. Yeah. So considering we're averaging about 25, 26 Ks a day, it was definitely a step up on the general agenda for the day.
So if I'm guessing that correctly, and I'm basing this on my capacity to walk about 5 or 6 Ks, you were doing what, 5 or 6 hours of walking every day?
Yeah, about that. Some days, like one of the days in Desert Road, we had to try and get ahead of a storm. That was a 10-hour day.
Wow.
But yeah, most of the days it was 5, 6 hours. So.
And tell me, what do you do? Like that's a lot of walking. Because how many days were you actually walking in total?
It was about 21 days of walking. There was one rest day and one day getting ready for the meeting at Parliament. So
This is a very long walk. Then this is this is not a walk in the park. This is actually something a whole lot more. And you did this on your own. What's going through your mind? How do you stave off perhaps the problems and the dangers that isolation like that can bring?
well, I'd love to say I had isolation, to be quite honest. To be honest, I would have spent at least probably 30 to 40%, maybe even up to 50 to 60% of my time on the phone, engaging with one of the team back in Tauranga who were throwing Facebook questions to me and saying, hey, look, how do you want us to answer this? As if you calculate how many answers we gave on Facebook, the 3 to 4 hours that I'd have in the evening wasn't enough to account for it.
Yeah.
So I'd spend a lot of time and then going through, what I wanted to post on Facebook. We'd have to do that orally. Yeah. And so spend a lot of time on the phone. So I'd love to say isolation was a problem, but it really wasn't so much. Occasionally you did feel really out there by yourself, but not so often.
There were people that joined you, though, for little segments of the walk, right? I guess as you're coming into different towns, people started to hear about what was happening. Tell us about a little bit of that, and perhaps some of the hospitality you experienced along the way as well.
Yeah, we had a good following on the first day through Tauranga. And then my son joined me for a couple of the days. We had people in Rotorua, Taupo, Taihape, and quite a few other places as well. So, it was really, really good to have them come and join us and walk with us. It was really encouraging to hear some of their stories. Some who had family members who had suffered an abortion or had gone through an abortion, some who had themselves, and some who were just upset by the law or style. So,
tell me, you put a sign on, didn't you, with your website on your back, so people posting motorists and others could see that. Did that attract? I guess that might have attracted a bit more attention. But did you experience much opposition, much abuse along the way as you were doing that?
No, I think I had probably 3 people out of the thousands of people who went past. One car, I think he could have just not been paying attention, but the distance between him and me was pretty small. Wow. And probably unnecessarily so. And 2 people, I think, who gave me an interesting sign language version. But
yes.
But apart from that, I would say that probably between 1 to 4 minutes, we would have someone tooting support and waving out in their cars as we walked, as I walked, or we were walking as a team.
Wow.
So through the towns. So we had a lot of support. Matter of fact, if you see any of the YouTube clips, you'll hear the cars tooting as they go past, and that wasn't staged. That was just as it happened.
That's amazing.
An amazing level of support.
Were there ever moments where you had that moment with the vehicle that got a little bit close, and a couple of 1 or 2 fingered salutes that you were given, but did you ever have moments where you felt a little bit unsafe or afraid? You thought, oh, I'm a little bit at a bit of risk here, or was it relatively stable most of the way?
A couple of the bridges, the State Highway 1 is not really designed for walking. So a couple of the bridges were a bit tricky. One particular coming into Mangaweka. And normally with bridges, I would go on the outside of the rail and I'd have to walk around the railing post, which was doable. I mean, if you fell, it was about a 20-foot drop, so it's not the end of the world. Wow. Mangaweka is about a 100-foot drop. We had to make a sprint over that bridge, and it was a bit hairy. So,
wow. How long do you reckon it took you to get from one side to the other?
A whole lot less than normal, I'd say. But I'm not sure. It's probably only about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, but you're constantly listening for traffic as you go.
Longest 40 seconds of your life, I'm sure.
Bit hairy.
I saw some of your posts where you were talking about blisters on your feet. Now, tell us a bit about that, because that must have been a bit of a thorn in your side, but a sore in your foot. How do you cope with that, and what was that like?
I only had one blister come up that was of any consequence, and that only lasted about a day as being painful, so it wasn't bad. Because you're walking always on a slight incline with the road. The road's nice and flat, but you're always walking on the incline. Your little toes get munched from just the sideways pull all the time. So probably by the time I got to day 10, it really did feel like my little toes were broken.
Wow.
But I met some guys who are really experienced road walkers,
Yeah.
and they gave us some clues about how to wrap your feet in wool.
Yeah.
That really helped save my toes. So, but other
That's
than that,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
worked out
So
well.
each day, did you have to? I'd imagine you start each day with a bit of stiffness, a bit of pain, and you have to walk through that barrier. Is that right? Is that how you did it?
Yeah, yeah. It takes about probably between 10 minutes and 20 minutes to start to loosen up, and
Yeah.
then you're pretty good.
Yeah.
And yeah, by the time I got to probably Bull, Samson,
Yeah.
my legs were feeling pretty good even in the morning first thing. So
Wow.
I was starting to strengthen up a bit by then.
I
So
bet. I bet you
not the
slept.
ideal way to get fit.
I bet you slept well as well each night. Did you?
Yeah, it did. I did. It wasn't hard to find the sleep button.
Tell me, was there ever a moment where you thought, I can't go on? I just it's too much. I can't get going.
Yeah, after the first day.
Wow. Yeah.
We had to, because I started at Mount Maunganui, so I had to get out of Tauranga.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Tauranga is a very long town. So
Yeah.
I had to walk about 33, 34 kilometers that day. And of course, I wasn't accustomed to it. So my kids laughed at me that night because they just said, how on the earth are you going to walk tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I was asking very much the same question. I was thinking, what have I got myself into?
Yeah.
But the next day, I had a good sleep, woke up, and actually felt quite refreshed. But I think we had a few favors along the way, really.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you probably, you obviously you're answering Facebook messages and other things. You're on the phone. A bit of time to pray and reflect on the cause that you'd taken up here for the unborn and their mums, I guess.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, in the time that I traveled to, like I said, I was communicating, but I was listening to all the discussions that they had in Parliament on the way down,
Yeah.
and there's lots of them. So if you can go to the bill, and you can actually look at the videos of the first and second reading, and it was really interesting to see people the MPs take on it.
Yeah.
They were really it was telling. There were some amazing speeches. And there were some that would just go like, my goodness, I'm not quite sure why you're in Parliament. So
Yeah, I had that feeling too. You're not alone in that.
yeah.
Tell me, speaking of Parliament, that's where you ended up. Towards the end of your journey, though, there was something special you had actually inside the little pink coffin, though, didn't you? Can you tell us what was actually in the coffin by the end of it?
Yeah, one of the team had felt initially. They said, "Well, why don't we take some names of the parents who have, for the kids who have been aborted. If any parents, well, any mums or dads or even aunties or uncles want to give a name that you can carry it to give some meaning to their name." We initially didn't do that because it would put us very much in the pro-life group. And while I'm pro-life, I also understand the pro-choice, position as well. And we didn't want to straight away offside everyone. It was only later on when we started getting the private messages, we realized how important that was to people. Yeah. So we put on Facebook, if you do have a name of someone you want me to carry into Parliament as me representing them, then I'm more than happy to do that. And within 15 to 20 minutes, we already had the first ones coming through.
Wow.
And so I think maybe you can see behind me, just there, we've got the little pink casket, which still hasn't found its resting place yet, but we're working on that. But it's full of names of children who are lost to abortion, or occasionally there's probably half a dozen that were lost to miscarriage, which we also carried. But yeah, it was quite moving to actually carry these names with me in the pink casket. So
that's beautiful. And I guess at that moment, every sinew, every muscle that's burning along the way, those names are a reminder to drive you forward, right?
Yeah. I had a lot of motivation. I mean, it was, I felt like I couldn't fail the people that we were trying to represent. So, and by then my legs were starting to feel a bit stronger, so that was very helpful too, to be quite honest.
Awesome.
So,
tell me, you arrive at Parliament. What happens when you get to Parliament? This is the end of your journey. What do you walk onto the grounds? You're greeted. What welcomed? What happens there in that part of it?
Well, it was a bit unsure. My initial thought was they would meet MPs to a certain extent, and some had said that they might come down to represent, Parliament itself. In the end, they were busy with their elections, and in the end, that wasn't disappointing because it was much more about meeting with the people. And there were only probably maybe 150 people there, so we weren't a lot in Parliament.
Yeah.
But 70,000 people watched our Facebook Live, which was just, I'm glad I didn't know that at the time. But it was quite staggering, and yeah, there've been an amazing following. I think there's another 6,000 who've watched it since, or 5,000.
Yeah.
But I think about 76,000 people have watched that. The speech and the speeches at Parliament, which we spoke, both to Facebook and the people there.
Yeah.
But about the journey and the need to have this law redressed to be more compassionate and to actually to care for New Zealanders, both unborn and the precious women who are in a tricky position.
Yeah.
So
well said. What was it like at that? Because at that point, that's the end of it for you, right? Did you have a celebration dinner? Did you get in a car and drive straight back to Tauranga? What did you do?
Well, we got there, and it was quite interesting because I somehow felt that wasn't the end of it. And then I felt really motivated to not finish at Parliament, but to finish at Tinakori Hill or Te Marangi, which is the hill up behind Parliament.
Yes.
And we really felt that we should be there as the sun went down or approaching that as a finish, because we had started at sunrise on Mount Maunganui.
Oh,
and there's a whole story between the meaning of Mount Maunganui and Te Marangi that makes a lot of sense of the journey, especially for the Māori people who we felt probably had the biggest heart for the hurt that abortion causes.
Yeah.
They really, it seemed to really affect them more than any other people group that we came across.
Wow.
It's really dear to their heart.
So you got
it
to
was cool to finish that.
And so that's a beautiful sort of little sacred moment there that really connects the whole journey. You what did you do then? Did you stay in Wellington and then leave the next morning, or were you straight back up to Tauranga?
We had some guys who had supported us in Wellington, and we had a dinner with them, stayed overnight, and then just quietly moseyed back on Sunday morning. And it was quite amazing to go back through the journey and just go, oh, here, I met this person here, and we had this amazing discussion. Oh, these people came out to the gate and they were waiting with bickies, and this person here, they had a lasagna waiting for me. It was amazing to go back through the journey. And of course, we did a lot faster on the way back. So
they talk about this idea that often soldiers who perhaps go to war and others who have been involved in very meaningful and profound experiences of pilgrimage, if you like, they go home and it takes a little bit to adjust again. Did you experience anything like that coming back down again?
Yeah, the first week was unwinding, but also there's kind of where to now. Though I must admit, I did roll into quite quickly meeting people from like Pregnancy Choice, Living in Colour, and a few others, Buttons Project, with the people from there. So it was quite busy actually getting back into it, and also contacting MPs to see if we can meet them. Some of who said they were quite keen to meet with us early in the new year to discuss things further. Plus also awesome. Meeting with the local iwi who were quite keen to hear back from us. So it was good.
That's beautiful. Tell me, was there a moment, or there might be more than one, but was there a special moment, a most meaningful moment on the journey for you that really sticks out for you?
There was so many. It's almost hard to pick out one. But there was one special moment where I was coming out of Foxton, and I was just sitting down, had a stone in my shoe, so I was trying to extricate that. And a car pulled up in a great hurry, and this young lady came running up towards me, and she said, "I thought I'd missed you. I thought I'd missed you." And she said, "Oh, can I give you a hug?" So she gave me a big hug, and she was just with tears of joy with what we were doing and the support of it. And her family, her mum and others had been so supportive through the whole thing. And it was amazing. It was just like, wow, I really feel that I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm actually walking with and for these people.
Yes.
So that was a precious one. But there's probably hundreds of them, to be quite honest, of others as well.
Yeah, I remember following along on Facebook. It's fascinating to see these. There just seemed to be a constant, these regular occurrences. And there was always something that seemed happening around this journey. It wasn't just, I guess, like the old Arctic explorers. They'd disappear, and then you'd get a letter about a year later, and find out what's happened. It was quite amazing to be able to follow that journey all along the way with you.
Yeah, no, it was neat, and it's a nice thing to look back on, because you sit there and go, but it would be a pity for this to just have been one trip. We really do hope things come from it, and not only we hope that there's a little bit more awareness of being able to engage in sensible discussion regarding abortion. Because I think the polarity, and that's what we did talk about, of pro-abortion, pro-choice, just the antagonism is not helpful. There are certain things that are true. Is the baby alive? Yes. The unborn child alive? Yes, it is alive. You can't hide from facts, but you can still have a heart.
Yeah, exactly.
And just say, okay, hey, because the question comes back to, you might have criticized me, but were you there to support me?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I as a person would have to say no sometimes. I wasn't there to support these people. And now we're looking at how we can actually do that, because I think support is such a big thing.
That's right. Yeah, we must always tell the truth, right? But we must always do it with compassion. And always be there to help. I think so many people, the reason they get driven towards abortion is that even just the fundamentals of community that we used to all rely on and family has broken down for so many people. And when you're in that situation, you've got no one around you, abortion doesn't just look like a choice at that moment. It looks like the only option to get you out of what would otherwise be a disaster, right?
Yeah, and that's a big thing. And I think the number of guys or women who especially said, if there was just one person there for me, I think I could have gone through with it. Wow. Just one. And it's just, it makes me feel, guilty for all the years that I have been not mindful of it. How can we make sure that we support these women who are in a desperate situation? Some will make it in a more cool decision, but a lot of them, it's a desperate decision.
Yeah.
And plus also how we treat people who have had an abortion, especially in a church environment, it can be extremely shameful. Yeah. But even in a society, there's a lot of shame. And I think if we can just get around people and be compassionate and loving, as opposed to judgmental, because let's face it, we've all messed up in one way or another.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's very, very solid wisdom there. Tell me, not to put you on the spot or anything, but have you got plans to make this a regular event? Are you going to do this again? I'd be tempted to join you, or others I'm sure would be as well, if this happened again. What do you think from here? Where to from here?
I don't think I'll make a frequent journey of traveling, the 500 k's down to Wellington. It was what it was then. Whether it was to happen again, I'd have to have a pretty clear conviction. I don't plan to do this yearly. This is definitely not going to be a yearly thing. But it would be good if I think New Zealand was given the opportunity to show their support of caring for both New Zealand unborn children and New Zealand mums to be who are in a desperate situation who need help. And it would be neat if New Zealand had an opportunity to show that. Exactly how that would look, I'm not sure at this stage.
That is awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for, I think, your courage, your dedication, the willingness to do something so out of the box that you hadn't done before, and just to throw yourself into it and to not give up. I think there's a really important witness to hope in what you've done, and I'm sure the rest of my audience as well is applauding you. So I just, from me anyway, I want to say a huge thank you for that.
No, it was my pleasure. It was truly my pleasure. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks so much for being with us here too. It was a really great conversation, and I've really enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. All the good times just begun. We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.